It's Sunday night, it's 8 o'clock. My name's Julian Hall, and you're watching Let's Kill Twitter. This is the show that aims to detox your timeline with the art of conversation. No easy task, I hear you cry, and you're right, it isn't. But thankfully, I've got plenty of people to help me tonight. I've got two fantastic guests, the comedians Josh Howie and Paul Tonkinson, and it's time to welcome back my co-host, Sajila Kershi. Oh, as if by magic. Bad time to go blank there, Sajila. There we go.
And she's here. Hello.
Hello, how are you? Do you remember Twitter?
Just barely. Gosh, I had a nice detox by not being on Twitter much whilst I was away. So it's quite exciting to get back into the hub of it all the gossip, all the anger, all the wah.
It definitely focuses the mind having you back, because I think I've paid a lot more attention to my Twitter feed just lately. Although let's face it, the stories that with the sleaze and everything else, there's been an awful lot to sort of watch out for. And we have got a very packed programme tonight. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick out a couple of things that have caught our eye, just to give everyone a flavour of the show, and then we're going to introduce our guests, get them on, and then get sort of knee deep into the tweets, essentially. Just before we pick out our tweet of the week, let me just say to everyone streaming, first of all, watching the stream, I should say, thank you very much. We're now streaming live across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. If you give us a subscribe on YouTube, that would be fantastic. That's where all our previous shows and clips are. And crucially, of course, follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @LKTZoom. That's spread liberally across the screen. Obviously, we're screen sharing the account. If you do that, you can engage with us live during the show, and that's where we'll be posting updates and clips and all the rest of it at all other times. So that's the finely honed admin out of the way. Sajila, did you have a tweet that you wanted to share in particular this week?
Well, do I want to share in particular? Well, I don't know whether to start with something light or not. But I did catch a few. I've been looking at more the sort of light-hearted ones as possible, though this one's probably in between, which is and I can't remember which of the two we said I was going to go for. But
I thought you went. Didn't you go for Millennials?
Oh yes.
Because I think the other one
I'm trying to shush a millennial behind me, a millennium /
it's never gonna happen.
Generation Z. Yeah, that's my son. I'm trying to be eating noisily behind me. So yeah, the tweet is it's from Amelia Antrim, luxuriously haunted.
Right, hang on.
And she's got a great thread. Basically, she says, "I hate the whole Gen Z versus millennials crap, but this one gets me. The way that corporate environments and society at large prioritize punctuality to the point of placing moral weight on it is some ableist puritanical bullshit." And it's basically she's commenting on an article that was in the Times about the punctuality of Generation Z is apparently a constant source of tension for anyone a little bit older. And I was thinking, because obviously like a lot of people, they're saying in the Times that our generation thinks it's really important to be work at 9 a.m. no matter what you're doing, and Gen Z is saying, what's the point? I've got better tech at home. And I kind of think I am a bit sort of like, my son accuses me of it as well because I'm always on my phone. Like, he thinks I'm a bit of a millennial Generation Z, and I don't, as you know, I'm a terrible timekeeper. And I know in the past at work I've been told off and been seriously told off for being 2 minutes late, and I just thought that was ludicrous. And I don't know, I mean, I know comedy, you've got to be on stage on time and stuff, but do 2 minutes really make a big difference in a corporate world? And so it's all kind of also ties in with a few of the other things that have been said about Gen Z, who that they're getting younger people into the workplace to kind of make it a more forward-thinking kind of environment because they're better equipped. And I was also comparing that to comedy because we go on about the new kids on the block, but actually the new kids on the block, they're doing all right. They're doing they did this year's crop of the live at the Apollo, all young and fresh. And actually I was I felt good about that. I thought that was a good thing. They bring fresh blood. But generally speaking, I do think creatives we do think outside the box. So I think we are all perhaps, and put it out to our guests as well and yourself, a little bit Gen Z trapped in
Are we? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I've lost track of millennials and Gen Z. I mean, basically, millennials is just the term you use for all younger people now. You almost like forget about Gen Z. But so, I mean, obviously, we've had a first technical hitch of the evening because I haven't been able to find the tweet. Who's the person that's tweeted it?
So the person that tweeted it, let me go back, is Amelia Antrim.
Right, okay.
She has 913 followers. She's a co-host of Creation Cast and G5R podcast. So yeah, and she describes herself as a poly bi. So I'm not sure what that is, but yeah, I mean, you know, I'm going to follow her. I think we should all follow her.
Absolutely. I'm just struggling hard to find that tweet now, which is annoying because I could have sworn I'd lined it up and ready, but there you go. But thank you for playing gamely on whilst that happened. Never mind. All right. Well, listen. You've certainly, the podcast listeners are going to be all over that, so that's fine. I picked out the meme that's come from the House of Gucci, which is the new film with Lady Gaga, Jared Leto, and Adam Driver. And I say it in that order. Yeah, thanks, Martin. Regular view of the slow. Slick, he says. Yes, I know. I'll recover from that. There we go. And there it was all along. There she is, Amelia Antrim. I hate the whole Gen Z versus Millennials crap, but this one gets me. The way corporate environments and society at large priorities punctuality to the point of placing moral weight on it. It's some ableist puritanical bullshit. I mean, I totally get this, because we've had a lot of issues with this in terms of lockdown, in terms of people working from home and all the rest of it. So I think that's, that is added to this issue of, what they call it, on-timeism or whatever it is. But yeah, no, totally. So I picked out the House of Gucci, as I say, which is, so this was a shot from the premiere, and it's got Lady Gaga, Jared Leto, and Adam Driver in that order, and it's just perfect because obviously the contrast in fashion styles here. I mean, it's Gaga being Gaga essentially, and a very snazzy Jared Leto, and a very dapper Adam Driver. But it's just a beautiful meme because it's I think it's knocked off the head turner meme at the moment, because it's just the contrast is so perfect. I particularly liked a lot of the journalists who picked this up. So Marie Leconte described it as magazine features and news, which is lovely. And then Hannah Al Othman from the Sunday Times, filed copy, edited copy, and lawyered copy, which I loved as a former journo. That really spoke to me. The original tweet, I think it's one of the original tweets because everyone is quote tweeting it, from Nick Dennis, had barristers, solicitors, and accountants. So I had a little bit of fun with that, and I went for Narcos Series 1, Narcos Series 2, and Narcos Mexico Series 1, basically to try and give an idea of the arc of how sort of showy the first two Narcos series were, because it was all Pablo Escobar, and then how relatively straight-laced the first series of Narcos Mexico was. But I have to say, Narcos Mexico does uplift, so keep watching because Narcos is fantastic. So that's a little runway into our tweets of the week. We have got a packed, I would say postbag, but that's a little bit old school to say postbag. We have got a packed selection of tweets tonight, and we've got two fantastic guests chomping at the bit to get into the Zoom room. So let's quickly run down who everybody is. So Julie, you're still on mute, so I might introduce Paul, and then I'm going to get you to introduce Josh. It's a particular pleasure to introduce Paul to you tonight because he's one of the first comedians that I ever saw when I was really getting into stand-up comedy. I used to be a regular down at Warwick University's Comedy Superstore, and Paul was one of the first comedians I saw there. Twice voted Time Out Comedian of the Year. Paul's been seen on BBC One's Michael McIntyre's Comedy Roadshow, Comedy Central's The Comedy Store, and The World Stands Up. And also, he very memorably won Channel 4's Celebrity Come Dine With Me. He also presented the Big Breakfast on Channel 4 back in the day, and presented on XFM. His live works included joining Michael McIntyre as a special guest on his live shows around the UK, but also playing to millions across the globe. And he's performed at all the major international comedy festivals, including the Montreal Just for Laughs festival that Josh has also played, and Paul hosted the esteemed Britcom Gala. In fact, I might even have been there that year. I'm not sure, but it's a brilliant gala to play. Paul's also a regular entertainer for the UK Armed Forces and has performed in Afghanistan and Iraq, playing to 2,500 troops in 45 degrees heat. So Twitter should be a breeze. So Gilo, you're going to introduce Josh for me.
I know. That's really impressive. Like CVs, guys, really impressive. Well, I'm really pleased to have both of you here and to welcome the next guest. Who the last time I remember seeing him was, I think we did a clowning course together. It's Josh Howie, who's a comedian writer. He's appeared on Dave's As Yet Untitled, 2 series of Comedy Central show, The Comedy Store, The World Stands Up, Connie Blue. What hasn't he appeared on those channels? And he spent 4 years writing as a writer presenter on the Movie Geek on Sky Movies, and was a writer and star of BBC Radio 4's sitcom with his own name in it, Josh Howie's Losing It, which was nominated for a BBC Radio Award. And Josh has also written and performed 4 solo shows for the Edinburgh Festival, to sell out runs at the theatre, Soho Theatre as well. And you can currently, although he tells me that this Biorg is now out of date.
This is the bit that isn't.
Oh, okay. So, you can be seen on Netflix comedy Hapless, which I must set my to play on my list to things to watch, because I have an intravenous drip attached to set Netflix. The last 6 months, I've done nothing but watch Netflix. And off stage and off screen, Josh has contributed to various articles in the Guardian, the Times, and the Daily Mail, and I'm sure he has a lot to say about tweets that you've been seeing in the past week or so. So welcome, Josh, and welcome, Paul. Really good to see you guys again, because I haven't seen you for a long time.
Hi guys, you're in the room now. You're in the room with us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
How?
It's amazing when you hear your CV, you realise you've actually done stuff.
Yeah, people say that a lot.
It does take that. It just, because it's easy to. It's quite nice, actually, isn't it? It's quite nice.
You didn't mention Paul's book, which just won an award.
Yes.
What the Daily Telegraph Sports Entertainment Book of the Year award.
Yeah, that one.
All right. I was going to get that in at some point, but yeah, I mean, it's just it's something. It's just nice, though, isn't it? And your CV sounded great, Josh. Sounded good.
You know what? It's just they left off that I do the TV reviews for the Jewish Chronicle, and that's my core audience. Yeah,
that's a big one. As we're going to find out in the.
Big time.
So Paul, why don't you tell us about the book?
The book is called 26.2 Miles to Happiness, a comedian's tale of running, red wine and redemption. And it's a sort of comedic psychodrama kind of exploration of me trying to beat 3 hours for the marathon. And, it's fairly funny and entertaining. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it came out just as the pandemic broke, so it all made it a little bit weird. But it's done well. And they've recently commissioned me to write another one. So I'm going to have to do a bit more running. I've reached that stage, and I don't in fact know whether I'm going to be able to, because I keep getting injured. So it's going to be interesting. But I'm going to write another book, and it's been great. I love writing. It's fantastic.
It's amazing. And how long? I've always wanted to ask a writer. How long does it take you to write these books? There's been a few writers, comedians who've written books, and I've never got a chance to ask them, like, how long does it actually take you?
It probably, I mean, I did a lot of pre-planning for the book, but when it came to the actual writing, I just sat down and did like 1,500 words a day. The book's 85,000 words. It was probably about 3.5 months, but I did it quite solidly, and I knew every day I knew what I wanted to write about. Very enjoyable way to live. Really, really good fun, actually, because you just. Sorry, my wife's creeping around.
That's what we like. We like to keep it edgy.
No, it was very enjoyable and much more relaxing than driving around doing loads of gigs all the time. So it was great. Yeah, it was really good fun. Yeah.
Josh, you've written articles, I know, but have you written like books that we don't know about that we?
No, I haven't read a book. I like to write about 50 words a day.
Yeah. Well, on Twitter.
On Twitter.
Not even one tweet is like, that's me done for the week.
Yeah, you're a bit more economical.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're Twitter novelists.
So just, I noticed that in the Observer, I think it was, that Hapless was being trailed as, and I've forgotten the journalist now, Vanessa, wasn't it? Who wrote it?
Yes, it's my wife, actually.
Is it?
No, not at all.
Oh, is that why it was trailed as the UK's?
Yeah, exactly. That's why they did a nice big picture of me. No, not at all. My wife's a therapist. much more useful.
As she needs to be.
As she needs to be, exactly.
What was
On
it?
the spot training.
What was it? It was trailed as the UK's version of
Curb, which is a pretty big comparison, really. It's not, but it's.
I just wanted to hear that from you, Josh. That was fine.
Look, it's not. It's got Jews in it, and that's.
Is that where the similarity ends?
You know what? It is funny, and it's got those kind of scenarios of someone seeing things through to their conclusion. Someone who's got their own morality and is willing to go that extra level.
If you are walking around with you is like walking around with a much poorer Larry David, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Larry David
without kids
hanging out with me. I know. Well, it's really weird because everybody said when Curb came out and people were like, "God, that's so much." Not to me, but like everyone. You go online, people go, "Oh my God, that's so much like me," and I'm like, "You don't know what you're talking about." Like. I'm the real person.
You are a bit like that. Would you recommend, if you weren't in it, would you recommend watching?
I would, yeah. And I like it because it's got a very English sensibility to it as well. So that's what I like about it. Is it's not, I love Curb, but it's all in LA and it's all golf clubs and restaurants. Yeah, and this is but I do have an interesting thing where next week I have to review it for the Jewish Chronicle.
Okay.
And so
that's very meta.
Yeah, totally. And I'm reviewing it. I'm not changing my name or anything. And I'm going to give it 5 stars. And I'm going to basically spend the whole 500 words talking about how amazing this guy called Josh Howie is.
Of course you are.
Yeah. And just not say that I'm Josh Howie. Just be like, this guy is the latest heartthrob. He should be leading Hollywood. And just do 500 words about how attractive this guy is. And then just leave it. And they'll be like, why?
It's like Malcolm Hardy reviewing his own show in Edinburgh, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Scotsman, yeah.
That's it. But this time they might publish it, which is good.
There is that. I couldn't remember if that one slipped past them or not, but yeah. Is it your first acting role?
I've done a few short films and some plays and stuff, but yeah, this is the first thing that sort of human beings might see. Beyond
that niche audience of human beings.
Yeah, but it's good, man. I had my first sort of recognition type thing. One of the dads near my school just said, "Oh yeah, I was walking past with someone else like down the road, and I pointed you out and said, there's my mate Josh." And I went, "Oh, I think that's the guy in Hapless." And I can't tell you how warm that made me feel.
You're gonna be insufferable.
I can't tell you how many times I've masturbated since that happened.
It's gonna be awful. If you become really famous, it's gonna be awful. It's gonna be.
I genuinely believe. First of all, I don't think I'm gonna be really famous, but I might be. But I think also there's a theory about fame where your maturity level stops. I read this in a really funny book, which I can't remember, but your maturity level stops. So Michael Jackson became famous at sort of 7.
It stops at the point you become famous.
Yeah, and then as soon as people start saying yes to you and being nice to you, you've got no reason to develop your personality any further.
Yeah.
And then Ashton Kutcher, he's like 17-year-old for the rest of his life. And if you look at the cool people in Hollywood, like John Hamm and George Clooney, they made it in their sort of late 30s or 30s, 40s. They'd spent 10, 15 years as waiters. They knew what reality was like.
So did you get famous when you were a kid then? Because you don't seem to have developed.
My point, Paul, is that if I got famous, hopefully I would be less of an arsehole than I would have been 10 or 20 years ago. Like I would still be an arsehole, but I wouldn't be as much of an arsehole.
I think there's some truth in that as well, because actually
I am an arsehole.
Yeah, no, there is, because we have these conversations in car journeys where the younger, when you have like a younger comedian getting through really quickly, they can't handle the fame or all that recognition or all that kind of accolade, and it just they can go a little bit crazy. And the ones that have like been around for a while and then get their break, I think they've got a bit more grounding, and it's very easy if you're young and impressionable to get caught up by all that kind of recognition, the fame part of it, the money.
You can be
not everyone. That's not everyone.
You might not remember, but there was a guy who got very famous quite quickly, and then just Jack Whitehall, his name was, and then he just he sort of had a breakdown, and then that was it. So it can happen too quickly.
Yeah.
But
Who knows what he would have got onto?
But having known him before he got famous, he was actually a very lovely guy. Someone else, so I don't know what he became like after the fame, but yeah, you're
disappeared
right.
now.
Hasn't he just announced that he's giving up stand-up, actually?
That's what I'm saying. Like, he just couldn't handle it anymore.
Okay.
He's massive. Is this your personality that you're developing, Josh? Is this
I'm trying.
I think we could be doing Ashton Kutcher's moisturising regime a big disservice here, to be fair. But yeah, I think that's actually going to lead us on to a tweet immediately, because I had another sort of thought about the direction we were going. But let's start with a sort of Fern Brady quote tweeting Joe Caulfield.
Oh yeah.
Since we've mentioned young comedians generally. So let's have a look.
I chose this. This made me sad, really, because Fern Brady, I think, is really fun. So, and also, I'm going to explain the tweet, because I actually listened to the podcast. So you can't see if obviously if you're on the podcast. But basically, it's Fern taking them. Joe is Joe Caulfield is a really funny comic. She wrote a comment basically saying that there's that wanker comedian who isn't really a comedian. It's like she's saying that's her shouting at the television because she's angry because they would never make it in comedy clubs. And then Fern Brady has sort of retweeted that saying, "Ha ha, I'm reading this while spending all my ad money and screw you." And it's a bit sad because first of all they're both funny, and secondly, Joe's got a point, but she didn't mention Fern Brady. She was talking about Fern, and I'm guessing this coming more from Fern's insecurity that she would be talking about her. I've done the gigs with Fern; she's really funny. So I don't know. I don't like it when I see comics laying into other comics. Really,
it's kind of, but. I mean, Twitter, as we know, can be quite an ugly place. Isn't it just an expression of Joe Caulfield's hilarious. It's a bit of a bitter comment to start with, isn't it?
It is. It's a little bit.
It just feels a little bit unnecessary. So to kind of slap it down because she's actually attacking loads of comics by inference, and I just think it's a bit of an odd one to. It depends what your policy is on tweeting, isn't it? I don't tweet that much. I retweet a lot. I go on Twitter a lot when I'm drunk watching football. I try and do silly things or whatever. But some people, it's a vent for anger, isn't it? So a sort of, I'd never tweet something like that. Basically, I would never.
But do you think that? I mean, there are people I watch on TV, and I'm just sort of amazed that they're.
But that's the world, isn't it? That's
okay. That is the world, and you just kind of.
I mean, funny club comics get the experience of being in a comedy club, making 300 people laugh, absolutely cry with laughter. That's an intensely pleasurable experience. I'm okay with that. I do mostly comedy clubs. I'm absolutely fine with it. It's an amazing experience that I'm constantly grateful for. I don't know. It just felt like I think they're both a little bit in the wrong. But you can't just spread bitterness like that and expect nothing back. That was.
I'm just going to sort of say that I didn't see this as I thought there was. I was like, okay, what's the joke? I didn't see that Fern was being bitchy necessarily, but and then the comments that are made, I've seen a lot in my timeline on Facebook, on Instagram and stuff, and all parties concerned are very funny and very successful in their own right. I agree. You don't need to throw a fellow comrade under the bus. And I do think that we've got to get over this culture we have, and like I said, we seem to see it a lot in backstage, green rooms, car journeys. It is a bitter. As much as there's a lot of love and comradeship, there is a lot of anger, bitterness, and resentment on people who are successful. Maybe that is just the fucked up, screwed up people that we are. But I just think, well, can't we just be a bit more? Certainly in the last year, it's been like I've genuinely enjoyed watching people, comedians, creatives doing stuff, in the most testing times, and I'm like, yeah, go for it, go, do it. That's great. And even those who are on TV, they're not necessarily the club comics like yourselves who are ripping up rooms. But maybe there should be another genre. They're not.
No problem with it at all. Was it set at that time thing there? Does that mean it was set at 12 p.m. Ferns, or what? There's a time thing on the tweet.
I don't know, day. It was like yesterday, I think it was, or something.
12 sort of PM. Does it? I'm just basically working out whether Fern was drunk when she sent it. Because that's a completely different thing. It's such a dangerous scenario, isn't it, to be drunk with a phone? I mean, it's like that you could end your career. You could. I mean, there's so many possibilities now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You
just
almost
speak to Andrew Lawrence. You know, that was I think was just a late drunken tweet. I really think that just got
absolutely. You almost need a kind of. There's that line in Sideways, isn't it? Did you drink and dial? It's like we need D&T. Did you drink and tweet? Because it's a very dangerous area, isn't it?
And a very valid point to make on this program. So out there, please be careful with alcohol and your phone.
Stay sober, folks. Well, can I just quickly ask before we move off this? Is this a sort of tension between Edinburgh comics and club comics, essentially? Is that what it is? Yeah, is that it?
There might be a bit of that. We certainly live in a climate where you look at some of the bills on Live at the Apollo, and a lot of them, you know, are more sort of Edinburgh acts, and the club acts are like, oh, they couldn't cut it in the clubs, you know, stick them on at 10:30, you know, try and follow me. But it sort of doesn't. It's not really that important. Some club comics make it through, and the audience is sort of they make their own decision, really. They make their. I mean, like Live at the Apollo 10, 15 years ago was basically a lot of club comics coming on, and it was on Saturday night on BBC One, BBC Two. It's now on Monday night on BBC Two. It's marginalised itself through the choices it's made. There's no need to be bitchy about that. That's just a fact. It's reduced its own audience.
Let's not be deluded. Let's be honest. The quality isn't the same. When it is people who've been doing stand-up 20, 30 years, and now the people on it, and I'm a gigging stand-up, but there are people I've genuinely never heard of who barely seem to get through the 10 minutes, and it's a very much weaker thing. And the fact is, Off the Curb have got a policy. Or the book, you know, it's like you have to fit into certain categories. That's just real. That's real as in that's the reality of it. You could choose to be bitter and angry about that, or you just go, that's reality now.
Totally. But that's what I'm saying. There's no point being bitter about it. That's okay.
I mean, I do feel that maybe there's some space for some kind of reality show, sort of, you know, bring back the Jongleurs format and employ people to start throwing bread rolls at comics just to see how they get through that. I don't know.
Give it a bit more life. But, you know, I'd never begrudge anyone anything in the industry. It's just there's just no point. You know, make your own pie. You know, Josh is on Hapless. I write a book. Everyone does their own thing. It's just. It's
evens out.
I think that's it. Everyone has their own thing, and instead of focusing on all the time and energy people, and I'll be honest, I'm bored of, I never get booked for that gig. I never. It's like, so, do you know what? Just go and do your own thing. Do it your own way. There are other things. Absolutely. TV, and, you know, it's not the be all and end all, you know, of everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many different platforms now, and that's part of the reason why it's harder to really crack through on TV. Almost doesn't mean as much as it used to do in the stand-up comedian's career. 10, 15 years ago, there was less stand-up on telly. There was less channels. Now there's so many. It's that the multiplicity dilutes its effect. So,
which happened in America as well.
Yeah.
But I can understand Joe's frustration, I think, because...
Yeah, but, I mean, she's been on telly. She's a great comic. She earns money. She's hilarious. You know,
it is hashtag plough your own furrow, I think.
Yeah. She's a successful comic. She's just like, you know, she's just had a moment there, hasn't she, where she's like, and that's, to be honest, it's more within her persona as well. It's sort of, she can be a little bit like that on stage, and so that's fine. But as
Sajila said, it's also just seeing the comments afterwards. I
haven't seen the comments afterwards.
Yeah, just not, you know, she's not funny. It's like, no, she's funny, man. She's probably funny. And that's what got my back up, and Fern is sort of opening her up to that. And you think that there is a
let's face it, you're just fomenting, division within the comedy circuit. You brought this deliberately to divide us, haven't you? Suits your sense of humour. Well,
speaking, you just basically wanted to do like a Britney version of, leave Joe alone.
Just trying to wind us all up, isn't it? It's trying to wind us all up so we can get more gigs. It's too late, mate.
I want to get both their gigs.
Speaking of winding, this is segued very nicely. Where was this segueing earlier when I was faffing around? So this is the Division and Sowing the Seeds of Division. This is one of your selections, Paul, from Danny Finkelstein.
Yeah.
Do you want to just do the same? Just like read it out or read the stuff?
Yeah. It's basically what we've sort of been talking about, really. Comics round with comics. This is sort of football fans round with football fans, and it's not at the highest level of football. It's Wealdstone playing Barnet, and some guy Simon Jefferson has tweeted, "Wankers, see you mugs in February. See how we deal with defeat. Cowardly pond life wankers." And that's at Barnet from Wealdstone. And Daniel Finkelstein is a very moderate voice, and I really like his writing. Said, "I just love this tweet as it concerns a 1-0 home victory for Wealdstone over Barnet. We're looking for the reason for polarised politics, and maybe it's just humans. It's that sort of it's a narcissism of small differences, isn't it? It's just like we like to row. Even during the pandemic, we were rowing all the time." Joe's rowing with Fern. Josh loves a row. I like a row. I'm constantly on about football. I spent the last week wanting Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to get sacked and disappointed he isn't. I've been rowing with even fans of the same team row. I've been rowing with Manchester United fans. We just like a row. We just look, and this is just perfect. Even if there's loads of similarities between us, and it's like every side feels put upon. And it would just forever thus. It would just be like, this is it, isn't it? This is human nature right here. It
doesn't matter how micro you get.
Yeah.
There's a famous Jewish joke, actually, which is like the Jewish guy's on a desert island, and after 20 years, he gets picked up by a big ship, and he sort of says the Torah, and he says, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, that's my synagogue." And then next to it, there's another synagogue built next to it. And the guy goes, "Well, what's that?" He goes, "Oh, that's a synagogue. I'd never join that one."
Yeah. It's like, and you can, if you're in a decent mood, it's hilarious. And if you're a bit tired and you've got low blood sugar, it's absolutely tragic. But either way, it's just the reality of life, isn't it? We will always be just always rowing on Twitter.
This is a lot of health warnings. It's like, don't be drunk, don't have low blood sugar.
Don't be human beings.
It's just funny, man. Funny. And for me, it tickled me because it's football, and it's just football fans constantly rowing. And as I say, within the same club, I support Man United, and just the fans are rowing all the time. But all fans row with each other anyway, So it was more a sort of meta comment on the nature of Twitter, really, that he's kind of encapsulated there.
Well, it speaks to the whole thing of this whole idea that people always used to say, people wouldn't say this in real life. They'd say it on Twitter, they wouldn't say it in real life. And I wonder if that was ever entirely the case, and B, whether it's actually even less the case now. Because what people put on Twitter is quite often what they want to say in real life.
Yes. Yeah. It's like the id, isn't it? It's just out there, isn't it? It obviously makes people more confrontational, but it's what they're thinking. I mean, he's just, I'm sure if this guy Simon Jefferson was in the ground, he'd be shouting at the blokes over. Do you know what I mean? He just can't be bothered to go at the ground anymore. It just saves time.
I mean, without Twitter, I guess it would have been, your mates would stop you because I need to tell that man what you just, and they were like, "No, mate, leave it out." And there'd probably just be more like pub brawls and fights. But we just now have verbal spats on. Yeah,
maybe. Well, it's interesting, this sort of disconnect between Twitter and real life, because chatting about Man United fans, that there was a big online petition about protesting against Ole Gunnar Solskjaer still be manager, and it built all week. But it was mostly Twitter fans. It wasn't sort of real. There's a row between the real fans and the Twitter fans. And they had this demonstration, and only about 12 people turned up. So it's that sort of disconnect. It's like we can be really loud and angry on Twitter, but when it comes to actual real life action, well, it's like Twitter warriors, isn't it? It's the easiest thing in the world to be a Twitter warrior politically, but to actually do something to affect change it's a lot harder, isn't it?
It's funny, we normally, I don't know, are you still doing the question where we find out where our guests, Twitter moment, defining Twitter moment was, where either you've had a tweet that's like gone viral or, gained thousands of followers. Do you guys have that moment or a tweet that...
Well, I used to use Twitter as it was almost like a notepad. Like when it was 10 years ago or so, I would literally just go, "Oh, that's funny," and then just write, any ideas for a gag or any scenarios for like a sitcom idea. I would just write it down, and that literally was my notepad. And I'd see if it got retweeted or liked or tagged or whatever it was, and to see if there was any sort of, any legs in it. So all that. So when you look at my Twitter, that's what it was. It was just a bunch of gags, and then Corbyn came into power, and then it's just descended into this hellhole of anti-Semitism over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. I want to go back to just writing stupid puns and silliness. But it's like it's just.
But that's an interesting thing about Twitter, isn't it? Because it's almost like, because I was looking through all my Twitter feeds and in the last couple of days, just thinking about this and what tweets I liked and stuff, and you realise that a lot of the people who you follow and the tweets and stuff, you're not particularly interested or sort of want. You become victim of your own feed, but of course you choose your own content. You don't have to be lost in a row about anti-Semitism. I mean, you've chosen that. That's it. That's
but then there's a whole echo. The point is you follow one person, you like their tweets.
There's a lot out there. I mean, I tend to accept a lot of people as friends and just sort of from different sides and stuff. And in a way, that's sort of worse because then you're just like ingesting chaos. It's just multiple views of absolute chaos and rouse and exhaustion. But all I'm saying is we choose our content, isn't it?
But it's a slow choice, I think. Yeah, it's not like you go, I'm going to follow.
Yeah. And then a year later, you look around, you've realised this is where I've been drawn into. Absolutely, totally. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, no, that was it. Going through my last week, and just even going through the likes, it was just everything was the trans debate and anti-Semitism.
Right.
And that was it.
Going with that, Josh,
just
bring us nicely to one of your tweets from E. Barlow. Do you want to?
Yeah, just picking on the superfan Martin. Our monologues are internal for a reason, is what he's saying.
I saw that. That's right. He's right.
Thanks, Martin, for that.
Absolutely.
So, listen.
Thanks for engaging there, by the way, Martin. Yeah, there we go. Do you want to read that out and tell us why you picked this?
Actually,
Josh?
Do you want to? There's three
So E.
tweets.
Barlow, she's really she's a Zionist. She's a Glasgow Jew who lives in LA. Who's a music journalist, and like me, she kind of got sucked into it. But she's much more visual, and she tweets a lot more about it. By the way, the best thing about being Jewish in this scenario is that there are other people who can say stuff a lot better than you can, who are more eloquent, more witty, whatever it is. So the other thing that I point out, and this isn't about anti-Semitism, is just that when I was really fighting it and arguing with people, like this is like 2018, 19, I mean, I was on it, I was writing all the time, tweeting all the time. But recently, I maybe only do one of my own tweets a week or two tweets. A lot of my business is retweeting or liking and I'm on Twitter a lot, but that seems to have taken over because I'll find stuff and that someone just says what I want to say and then and I just retweet it instead. It's just it's a lot easier that way. So she's one of those people. There's but the point that she's making here is there's a picture. This is at the COP26. There was a big, climate protest, which is great. Yet a big contingent of that was a lot of Palestinian flags, and this particular sign saying like "clean up the JNF," and you're like, and this person's made this point where the emissions for Israel of CO2 is 0.18% of the world. It's just like why are those flags dominating the thing? And the charity that they're actually protesting in their flyers, JNF, the Jewish National Front, is a tree planting charity. Like it's so mental. You're just like, it's so infuriating. And how people can't see that is just, for me, out and out anti-Semitism. It's not a criticism. There's no direct criticism of Israel's agricultural policies or whatever. This is a localized land dispute, and I'm not saying that means that Israel's done everything great in that dispute, but what the hell's that got to do with the climate? Like when you're bringing that into every other protest movement or whatever, it's like, why are they not protesting China or India, the biggest countries who are actually putting out CO2 into our atmosphere, at a climate protest? It's just, for me, that's pure anti-Semitism.
It's a bit tokenistic, isn't it? It's just
totally
sort of slammed in there. Do you know what I mean?
But no, like what you protest, have a protest, great. Protest Israel's actions, great. why are you there at an environmental protest? Like it's like Jews and Israel is like the reason why it's everything is the whole world is.
It's like 2 for 1 though if you're a protester, isn't it? It's like you do the environment and the Jews at the same time. Do you know?
I think they're also just lazy. It's like they've got their one flag, and it just means they can go to any protest.
Yeah, of course.
They don't want it. It's like not changing your underwear.
Get your Palestinian flag, just go anywhere.
Yeah, you know, that's what it is.
And everyone's tight on money. They go out and buy new stuff. Like
pure laziness.
Still got that. Let's just use them from last time. That's all it is. That's all it was. Do you know what I mean?
So there's it's just upsetting. And
of course,
the funny thing is, I'll retweet that stuff, and the only people who will like it or retweet it are other Jewish people. No one cares.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the problem because I see what you're saying. So, for example, Extinction Rebellion get a lot of flack from people saying, why aren't you protesting the Chinese embassy or wherever it might, or fundamentally the Chinese embassy or perhaps now the Indian embassy as well. But and then they say, well, because Britain's done. They're always reminded what Britain's done in terms of emissions But then they're like, well, it's not so much charity begins at home, but they say we have to still clean up our act and all the rest of it. And this is an adjunct to that. This is British people protesting in a British city with another agenda. So even though you could absolutely make that point in terms of, like you say, when you retweet it, no one's going to see the logic of that argument because if they've already picked a side, as it were.
Well, I mean, there's no side. Like I mean, people have their opinions, but I guess the reason why, and this goes to the nature of Twitter, and when I was arguing a lot, it was like, it never was about trying to convince the people I was actually arguing with. And I'd go on these threads and they would just go on and on. I was like I'd be in like 10 different threads at the same time. I was absolutely mental, right? And it it was not good for my mental health.
No.
Was this as well as being a dad? Was this as well as
having a dad to five kids?
Yeah.
Five kids. Yeah. So, and then if anything, maybe that was why I was on Twitter. It's like, I don't want to deal with you. This is easier dealing with a bunch of far left ranks for the most part. And but I always felt like, first of all, saying something was enough, was a part of the point, just to say, here is the other view, but you would never know who would actually be reading this stuff. And then occasionally I would get a really nice email from my website, like, thank you, I didn't really feel like I knew enough to be able to comment this, but so you don't know who sees this stuff. But I would get like death threats and hate mail, but that's a different thing. But
that's because you're famous now, that's why.
Yeah, no, this is pre-fame. Although they did try and do a pylon, the Corbynites did try and get me about a year or so ago, after I put out the tweets about Corbyn, and they found a joke that I wrote like 10 years ago, which was the Gaza Strip. Like, do they call the Gaza Strip? Is a Gaza Strip a Brazilian that went wrong, or something like that? Like, and actually, it turns out a few other people have come up with a very similar joke. Yeah. But they were just like, how dare and this is one of those things that I'd write around. I'd be, thinking, oh yeah, and put it down on my phone, and they'd sort of found this thing, and like this was this big gotcha moment. I was like, well, first of all, I'm sorry because it's not a good joke. That's why I feel bad about that.
It's a club joke, isn't it?
It's not a great joke. I think the only thing that I actually winced was because I'd written ladies. Is it that something like that? And I said use ladies as something weirdly I sort of somehow gotten a bit weird about. But I would say women now instead of ladies feels more pejorative somehow. That at least the language changed in the last 10 years. So the only thing I felt bad about was using the term ladies. I didn't care about the joke, and it's not a good joke. That's why
there's a reason why some club comics don't get on the Apollo, isn't it?
Yeah, using the word ladies. Some, yeah. But the point I wanted to make was, and this is what I really would love to say, and this is if anybody is watching this, and please to understand this, is like when the fighting and all this thing was going on with Corbyn and against Jewish people against Father, you got like, I thought maybe Israel has got like the special department, maybe there is something, whatever. And I've been in it now for a couple of years, and it's about a core group of about 20 to 30 like Jews in the UK who are like me, like, just normal Jewish people who have probably a bit more time on their hand, who are just were seeing what was coming out and seeing like Holocaust denial on the far left and just seeing some mad stuff and just going, wait a minute, no. And there's, it's so mental to me to see how, you know, Tracy Ann Oberman and Rachel Riley probably are the most famous of those people. But this person, Eve, there's a guy called Lee Kern who wrote one of the writers on Borat. And there's a few higher profile people and lots of just very normal Jewish people who like parents who would be at my kid's school or whatever. And it's like, there's no coherent movement, like we're all part of a gang. Like now I've met some of them in real life, but it's about 30 people. That is what it was, standing against the sort of far left Corbynites who are probably number between 50 and 100,000 people. So it was like in the middle of it in the sort of 2017, 2018, 19, it was mad. Like it was just like the feeling the numbers and stuff, and you'd tweet something and get like 2 retweets, and then they would, but you know, hundreds would come and attack you. It was like the disproportionate, because there's so few Jews in this country. Anyway, it was just mad. So I just wanted to say, you know, of course I could be like some Mossad agent who's been told to say this, and there really is a department of Jewish media, whatever, and I'm one of the members. But you could believe that, or you could believe that there's about 30 of us who are just normal people with kids who are tweeting in between putting our kids to bed and whatever, who just reached a point where we were like, someone has to say something to counter this narrative, which is just bullshit. Anyway, that's my point. Anyway, let's get back.
That's great, and you know, thanks for bringing that tweet to us. But we're just going back to what you said about the 30 people. This is all on Twitter. This is all happening. This is all happening on Twitter. So
small,
So obviously that's then, if you've got 30 people who are feeling one way, one opinion, then the rest of the world feels like they are the opposite opinion. How I'm more interested in thinking, you know, finding out how that makes you feel. Like, oh, you know. Well,
it wasn't the 30 people were of like 30 people. Like there were allies and, you know, other people, but I would say there's a core group of people retweeting each other, retweeting each other. But a lot more Corbynites. I think the big difference is there's just a general indifference, or like Paul is a mate of mine. He might see a couple of my tweets. It might inform him what's going on, or that. But most people, and that's fine, because why should, you know? For me, it's just about getting out the fact that there is this fight going on, you know. And I don't feel like that means that the whole country is anti-Semitic or whatever. It just means within Twitter, which is predominantly, I would say, a
very small part of the world, though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, it's a very small spot. But in this little part of the world, which contains actually a lot of academics and people and comment, and that it felt very one-sided, the debate, as such as it was a debate, and it was actually worse on Facebook because it was people I knew, and I don't really like talking about it on Facebook, because when the election happened, I was literally just, it was so horrible. People I've known for 20 years, people, you know, and I'm trying to be nice about it. I try to explain, I'd send people things like, look, you may not, because it's a very complicated and quite boring subject, I imagine, if you're not that into it, but it's complicated. And so I'd have to send like these links to people. Sorry, yes, but exactly. So
I reached out.
You did. Paul was one of the, because he saw that how hard it was really. And in this world of comedy, which is like a tradition, the majority of a leftist group, and I consider myself part of that. I've always voted Labour. Traditionally, my parents worked for Labour, so it was really hard. People, you know, people blocking me and abusing me. It was so nasty and horrible. The whole thing. Paul did. Thank you. That was so nice of you. You were like the only person to actually reach out. And
bad
there must have been more.
People.
There must have been
more. No,
bad
you weren't. That was it, mate. You were the only one.
But it's disturbing.
But then you're my only friend, so why would anybody else?
It's disturbing how much worse it is on Facebook, and I think it's because you know those people more than you know.
People you've had a drink with, or whatever.
So it's more sort of social community, isn't it? It's
it was really, really hard and really horrible.
And I think, Josh, you know, you kind of raised a really interesting point. Like where on Facebook it might be worse, and it's your friends and it's your colleagues who are not. You know, obviously, I wasn't aware of this. We're not, you know, I wouldn't necessarily have thought there was anything happening with you. But you're friends with Paul. But I've also have found that there is a pylon, even from our own industry, of what is,
Pylons are awful,
and I don't like it. I think it's bullying. I think it's bullying and it's nasty. And it doesn't matter what viewpoint you have or what way you're coming from. Every person has a right to be heard, which is hopefully what we hope this show was, to do, so that people have that kind of.
Pylons become performative in themselves because they're piling on for each other to show. So it's like when you're getting attacked by a gang and it's the little kid comes in from the outside and tries to. They're not piling on just to have a go at you. They're piling on to show to their mates how they're piling on, and so the whole thing escalates. And then it starts, and then it'll go to, we need to back off because I've heard they're not mentally well at the moment. And then it just gets worse. They start inferring people who they disagree with are mad, and then it just goes on and on and on. It never ends. It's awful. It's distasteful rubbish,
You're bad people.
Right. I mean, let's. I mean, I know
it just escalates. But I got a tweet about ducks, haven't I?
Yes, but I've got that up. I really like that one.
Bring on the
there, here we go. Here we go. This is slightly less controversial, and it's just I'm into running, and this just made me laugh. Mark Rimy's just like he manages to be funny about running, which is quite a difficult thing to do because running's inherently can be quite a tedious and tiring activity.
It's very anti-Semitic as well.
He's incredibly anti-Semitic. Yeah, he runs with a Palestinian vest, and he's a duck ran the New York Marathon last week. There was a marathon, and a duck famously ran it, and there's footage of this duck running it. So he's just put together. We know that runners tend to bore. Everyone who runs a marathon tends to tell all their mates about it. And then this is just a little joke about the duck telling all his mates he's run a marathon. It just tickled me. It's just a bit of fun, really.
Yeah, I mean, you wrote a book, so you don't
even.
I wrote.
You literally. I took it even further. Yeah,
you really go to the pub.
To ducks.
Paul just goes to the pub, slams his book down on the table, and just says, "Read that."
That's talk.
We don't have to talk about it anymore.
About the marathon, yeah. So
can people read the book instead of running? Essentially, then is that a big?
Of course they can. I mean, it's. I think people who like running obviously like it, but Josh has never run a marathon, and no, so it's fine.
Paul did inspire me to try and run, and I put a photo up of me. I should find that tweet. There's a photo I put up of me after running half an hour, where I literally was going to die. I was so angry because I was. It's such a beautiful book, and it was so inspiring. And I was like, I'm going to support. I'm going to heal myself through running. And then I did it, and literally every step, I was like, "Fuck Paul, that cunt! What an asshole!" I was so angry with him. Like it was so horrible.
It's great to inspire people so much. It's great. It's moving. But
how many marathons have you done?
I don't like to talk about 7.
Yeah, my brother's doing
Snickers now, aren't they?
7 is good. It's all here in the UK or
to be honest, 6 in London because I'm quite lazy, and London Marathon's fantastic. And then I did one in Yorkshire, which was brilliant as well in York. But London Marathon's incredible. It's amazing. But you don't have to run a marathon. It's fine.
Did you wear a costume?
No, thanks. No. Although in my first one, I was beaten by people wearing a costume. I have experienced that of people, in like full armor, sort of running past me. I've had that, but I managed to get a bit faster in the end. So yeah, it's good fun. It's a laugh, but it's just funny to see a duck in the middle of it all.
And it really did run the whole thing. Like it can run.
No, apparently the duck ran the whole marathon. Apparently,
that's amazing. God, that makes me feel really bad.
The trouble is that at the end of the marathon, when they put the foil round it, probably thought it was going to be cooked.
Yeah. This is a really lean bird.
Yeah,
delicious.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. So listen, I mean that's nice and light-hearted, but we've still got plenty of choice of things that aren't light-hearted, and
we'll make them light-hearted. We'll do it.
What about the Simon Edge?
Well, that's we've got a choice between vaccine and gender, or we could talk about wine.
I'd love to talk about gender.
Go on! No, I tell you, you've hit him. You've knocked out of the park this week, haven't you, Josh? It is your turn, so we'll go to your.
All right, let's do the gender thing.
No, it's not you. Well, that is kind of related, but it's actually more Simon's, isn't it? Simon Edge. Who's Simon right for? Simon Edge.
Yeah, I don't even know. There he is.
There he is. He's the voice sanity in the Twitter hellscape.
Okay, so he wrote The World Is... Yeah,
and he's written a book too, Josh.
He's written a book, now making me feel terrible.
Right.
Look, this the point of this is
right.
that...
So let's just read. I'm just going to quickly read it out. Every broadcaster. So Simon Edge's tweet runs: every broadcaster, commentator, politician, or policymaker using the expression LGBTQ+, which is now obligatory at the BBC, should be asked 2 questions before they continue. 1, Q stands for queer. How do you define it? 2, what does the plus stand for? And this is in the wake of stuff going on at the BBC. But the last thing I read about that was the head of news, Fran Unsworth, telling staff that they would have to cope with things they didn't like to hear. So they were trying to keep it open, weren't they?
Yeah, positions that they maybe men shouldn't be in women's sport or whatever, for example. So this tweet, just this expression LGBTQ+, and I actually heard it. I went to America a couple of years ago, did some gigs, and I was out there, and was what people say. And you just go, yeah, okay, it's LGBT, it's LGBTQ. Like, you do it because you just want to be a nice person, and you want to be inclusive, and you want people to feel validated into their identity. And what's the difference? Like adding a thing on, except for the fact that it's like, actually, what do these things stand for? This guy is person that has pointed this out. Q stands for queer. Now, what does queer? Now, there's a few problems with this, my understanding of it. First of all, homosexuals, who maybe you guys know some, that's a joke, do certainly ones who I knew who grew up in the 80s, 90s, queer was a derogatory term. So that has now been kind of the idea that's been reappropriated by younger people. But that used to be as a derogatory term and not a nice word. And a lot of gay people I know who are a bit older do not like it being used, at all. For start, that's number one. Number two is, what does it mean, queer? And within this whole debate now, queer is literally, like, there's someone was talking about, I heard on the podcast someone saying that they were, this woman was tall, so that she self-identifies now as queer. That, like, the point is, it just means anybody, it's a self-IDing thing, which is part of the what's going on anyway. But now it's like, I saw Sophie Hagen saying, oh yeah, I'm queer. I mean, have you ever gone out with a girl? No. Have you ever had sex with a girl? No. Have you ever kissed a girl? No. Oh, but I'm queer. No, you're heterosexual.
It's become a kind of, you're suggesting it's become a kind of affectation to denote.
Absolutely. And she said it in this interview I read, said exactly this. Oh, I hate the idea of being a boring straight person. Right. So people are putting themselves into this, a genuinely marginalized group of whether that's trans people and lesbians, gays and bisexuals, and just like, because they don't feel interesting enough or their personality or whatever.
Isn't that part of it? I mean, obviously there's generationally, sort of our generation feel a little bit different and try to understand this. Isn't part of it because we define it as a sort of like a mode of rebellion almost, doesn't it? It's just like, we can't get on the property ladder, the job for life's gone, meet my girlfriend, she's called Kevin, and she's got lovely genitals. Do you know what I mean? It's just a bit, and we're not meant that we don't understand. That's what I'm saying.
No, you could be right that there's certainly this idea, I think, of what's going on with gender and non-binary and things like that. It's definitely related to it. But when the BBC and they're in their style guide, and this was covered in this 10-part documentary Stonewall, which is amazing, which is made actually by the BBC.
Oh yes, I've heard that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And then that becomes the common usage, but it just goes through under the radar. And just like the same thing the BBC in their style guide has said, that the definition of homosexual is someone who's attracted to someone of the same gender. That is a big difference.
Yes,
that means that a lesbian, if they attract someone with, or someone who identifies as lesbian, is now gay, but they have a penis, like it throws everything up, and people aren't really online with the difference between sex and gender being self-identifying and sex being your biological sex. Homosexuals, I know, they are attracted to someone of the same sex.
Yes.
And that's a massive difference. So that's like queer. What is that? So it's like, it's such a broad thing now. And secondly, the plus makes it even more so.
What is the plus? Well, does anybody know what the plus is?
The plus is literally now everything.
Yeah.
Like everything. Like it becomes so broad, it becomes meaningless now.
So what
And
is the plus? Because I mean, I've got one, a BAME, right? But I'm not sure that I actually ever agreed to the BAME. I never got the memo.
Well, a lot of people don't like the BAME.
Yeah, but it's like, so am I now the plus? Could I possibly plus? Because
no, well, that's different because that's ethnicity.
Do you know what I mean? It's like if I've done some of the aforementioned that didn't make someone queer, I could be queer. And I'm just putting this out because it's a discussion that we obviously don't see often. We've Julie and I have spoken about it many times about how we would broach this, but genuinely I think there's just not enough knowledge about how we're changing these things, because I was just joking, so I haven't got the memo, but I don't know. I want to not offend
absolutely
someone,
but that's the song.
Let them be who they want.
But so Julie, the crazy thing is that people who use this title have forced this through, they don't define it. That's what's so mental. So on this Stonewall podcast, they interview this guy, Ben Cohen, who is head of Pink News. And they ask him to define certain things like Two-Spirit and things that are under this umbrella. And he is like the expert. His organization is built around promoting this ideology, and he couldn't define it. That's how mental. But they people who are fighting for this stuff are pushing stuff through without having a definition, yet expecting that stuff is going to try to be kind of written in law.
But the BBC has pushed back from that as well, haven't they?
They've quit.
They've moved themselves on the Stonewall thing.
Yeah.
And what you've also got to realise as well is that this sort of over concentration on language and self-ID and stuff, it's pretty fringe, and aspects of it might manifest, might not. But most normal people just don't really. They don't care that much.
Yeah, even that term "normal" is like no longer an acceptable term to use.
Yeah, but I know, but we all know what that means. I'm not even saying normal. I'm just saying the mass of the populace. But they don't care. They don't want men in girls' toilets. They don't want that. That's when it becomes a problem. Most people, I'll call you whatever you want. I just don't want you walking into my daughter's changing room and freaking her out. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of
whilst I understand, and we also said that earlier, that Twitter isn't the rest of the world when it comes to like percentage of people on Twitter, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think there's been hints of this issue coming out into the mainstream media. When Keir Starmer had to talk about Rosie Duffield, but it's sort of smatterings of it, and maybe if you follow political programs, you're getting more of it. But there's a battleground going on inside, whether it's the BBC or the New York Times, and it's the older staff versus the younger staff, and that schism is going through a lot of these institutions. And I
think it's marginal. I still think it's quite. It's only an opinion. I still think it's quite marginal. I think that if you over focus on it politically, it's over. I think if you over focus on it, the mass will just. I think they're just not having it. It's not because they're prejudiced. It's just they just cannot be bothered with it. It's just like there's a basic sense of like if a guy's gone through male puberty and got really stronger, they don't really want them competing with girls because there's an obvious unfair physical advantage. They don't want men with genitals wandering around their daughters' changing rooms. And above and beyond that, I don't think they're that bothered. It's just, I'll call you what you want. It's fine.
Absolutely.
I want to be polite.
No one is trying to take away anybody else's rights, stop them, people living how they want to live.
Oh, absolutely.
Anybody could identify and deserves full protection of the law and the ability to live safely without being attacked. Yeah. All of those things. But I guess it always comes down to rights. And what we've never seen before within movement, some people like you compare it to the gay rights movement of the 80s and 90s and going, marriage, gay marriage didn't take away from heterosexual marriage.
Yes.
So it was never about rights. There wasn't a conflict of rights there.
Yeah.
So now there is a real conflict of rights of between people who are mostly 95% of people who are who are trans being actually people who just self-identify as trans, i.e. they don't take any surgery, they haven't had any hormones, and those rights against the rights of biological women. And there's a few places.
That's the conflict, isn't it?
Yeah, sports, prisons, and changing rooms. And it's not a lot. And these problems are not insurmountable. They can be worked out. But there's been a sort of movement or an argument to sort of just go, no. Because it's an ideology, it's like no, biological men should be able to compete in women's sports because they're women, and that's it. And
it's also,
can I just maybe take this a little sort of like we're talking about Twitter and trying to detox the timelines, as it were. But obviously, the way that if you do have an opinion, which kind of both of you have kind of expressed, and quite valid points of view, if they are expressed on Twitter, that immediately it's been shut down. These conversations are shut down by you're a TERF or
absolutely.
Bigger. And obviously, if as a belonging to minority groups, and you made a really interesting point at the beginning, saying that it's deliberately putting yourself into a marginalized group, having been when you belong to a literally a marginalized group, it is not a pleasant place when you've had the worst of it. So why would you willingly want to join that? And I just wonder, this complete shutting down, not allowing this space to have that discussion, is that perhaps thwarting the movement in itself? Is that actually creating the marginalized?
Absolutely, Julia. You're right. But Stonewall, their motto has literally been #no debate. Because they want this stuff to be pushed through, and they have pushed it through with no debate, LGBTQ plus, no debate. And when you do actually debate and go, well, what does the Q stand for? What does the plus stand for? Then when they can't even define it themselves, it falls apart. Yeah. So of course they don't want. Can I just bring in Jay
Chappelle's routine? I don't know if you've seen it, and I don't know if that's the one that's been got all the, kind of hoo-ha about it, the LGBT, 20% of the alphabet's been used up. Is that the routine because he questions the very same things that you were saying in this tweet, that has got people riled up and calling him
that wasn't in his latest special, that routine, but he does talk a lot about the trans movement, and actually does some incredibly anti-Semitic jokes. You're welcome to read about them in the Jewish Chronicle.
I'm just bringing it up because I know that's the only routine I've seen.
But
related to LGBTQ.
But what you're saying about Twitter, you're absolutely right as well. Is that here we are talking about it, or mostly me, and I apologise about it because it's something I feel strongly about. But it's on Twitter, and I feel somewhat shame about this. I was kind of sucked. We talked about how you kind of follow one person and then you like their tweets and they retweet something. That is how you get pulled in. And so that sort of organically happened to me over the last kind of 4 years, and J.K. Rowling doing it. And I was terrified. I was just getting so upset about it all because I'd see J.K. Rowling putting out a statement that it seemed very reasonable to me, and being inundated with rape threats and death threats. And it was just terrifying because I wanted to say, wait, I wanted to take a stand and say, no, but I was so scared of what was going on, and seeing my colleagues just launching on anybody who dared to say that sex is binary. It seems so ridiculous now because here we are, and it went to court, and now things have changed a little bit. But 2 years ago, to say the word sex is binary was enough to this whole cancellation isn't real. It's real, and people talk to each other, and suddenly you're this right-wing fascist Nazi for daring to just say a fact. And things have started to change now, and there is debate. And unfortunately, I'm sorry that there are people who are taking that to be a threatening to their identity. And that is sad and this is why this person at the BBC had to give this talk, the head of the nearly ex-head of news. I'd say, I'm sorry, there are going to be people who disagree with it. That doesn't mean that that they need to be attacked, that they can't live their life, shouldn't live their life totally safely, whatever. But I think the problem is that it's this is the difference. People have made this comparison before, but as we mentioned, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm Jewish, and that identity.
Left that to the end.
That's the big pullback and reveal. But it's my identity doesn't top trump anybody else's. So if someone wants to discuss with me, or even what does that, my belief in a God and these different things, they're not going to be, this idea that that makes them to question it is enough to say, no, that's anti-Semitic or whatever. No, my belief is my belief. The moment that I have to force it onto you where suddenly, say I say, Jews refer to non-Jewish people as Gentiles. But if I'm saying to you now Paul, you have to introduce yourself now as a Gentile every time you see. Otherwise, that's going to offend me, my identity as a Jew. And that's like the equivalent of cis or something.
It's restricted. Well, this is what we're talking about, because ultimately a lot of this is about language as well, isn't it? And it's about people with services, or breastfeeding people, or whatever. And it's so it's actually when you start to want to really change language like that fundamentally, it results in nothing less than the collapse of meaning, and we descend into chaos.
Yeah, and it's
great summary. That was beautiful. That is the opening of your new book. Down, Paul.
Yeah, no, totally.
But these things, it's good to discuss these things, and I can feel the discussion around them changing a little bit and becoming slightly less aggressive. In part, of course, Kathleen Stock lost a job recently. You go down Waterston's bookshop. There's certain authors who their books are not in the
they're hidden in the back room. You have to ask for them to get.
You have to ask them, like some sort of illicit criminal.
Oh my God, that's like back in when I bought Satanic Verses, and they locked the shop, and then took me around the back and wrapped it up and gave it to me, and I was like, is this really necessary? Can I just, and it's like, well, why do you need the book? And I said, I just want to read it because I had a copy a year ago before the scandal, and now the scandal's broken. Guess what? I want to read it.
Isn't it? But you try and buy a book by Kathleen Stock or Julie Bindel in the local Waterstones down in Crouch End. It's not on the shelves. It's not in the window. You've got to ask for it. It's crazy.
See, this is quite scary when you said, Josh, it's like, I know it was you, Paul, saying that it's literally says no debate. Like, don't want to come out with like, this is it, no debate. And then you can't buy a book, books which are so necessary for us to understand and make sense of the world. It's so important for future generations to be having that, to be able to read different, not just be in an echo chamber. It's not just this issue, it's just, with all the things that have been coming up tonight, in a very real position of like perhaps, losing the freedom that we enjoy as comedians, because everything is, going to have to be a lot more thought out. And I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to be in a world where I have to constantly, check everything that, I'm saying.
I feel it's, I don't know whether it's my imagination or because I'm innately optimistic, but I feel it's starting to soften a little bit. I just feel it's starting to reach a space where there's a bit more chat. I don't know, in some areas. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. I think it's starting.
There is a shift.
Things like the BBC.
I think there is a shift.
Just a slight.
And it is good to be careful about the language you use.
Absolutely, you don't want to offend anyone unnecessarily. You don't want to. It's not really about.
Yeah,
that,
I mean, also just make the point that obviously, people watching will be like, well, there's no voice, there's no alternative voice necessarily in this quad that was putting a
of course,
putting a point of view because they might be trans or queer or however they'll term themselves. But I think the debate I hope it is softening, because there are lots of debate on Twitter that remind me of the scene in The Prisoner, and I'm not actually a fan of The Prisoner, but there is one scene in The Prisoner which just seems to define Twitter and debate, which is when he gets up in court and he's about to say something and the whole jury get up and shout, aye, and they shout him down completely, and it's like, wow, it's all Twitter debates. And some debates, let's just say, some debates are more like that than others, and quite often it's like that it's someone doing it on behalf of someone. As well.
Well, what's interesting about social media is that people end up not wanting to get into these debates because of pylons and fear of social exclusion, etc. So they end up skulking around on direct messages, on the DMs. Do you know what I mean? Or like you get people supporting each other on DMs because why invite abuse? But that's no good, really, because it's ultimately no good. But it just shows what a toxic environment is.
What I did is, because I got into this thing because weirdly I was just your default lefty comic, that's my. And then when the anti-Semitism happened, there was so little support from people on the left, and then just accusations of being some sort of Mossad or Israel agent or far right person, and seeing that, and it just, for me, it was like the blinkers came back to wow, if this is how my side, seemingly my side are treating me for just pointing out, if it was the hypocrisy that just absolutely did my head in. And if people had just gone, if even Corbyn had just said, you know what, I can totally see that's problematic. I'm sorry, I've got to look. He couldn't do it. And his supporters can't do it. He has to be the most anti-racist person in the world and a perfect human being and all this stuff. Rather than, we all make mistakes. We all have assumptions. We all hopefully grow. But to sort of pretend that we're these fully formed, at this particular moment, we are perfect. And the far left, because they were the community of the good, couldn't just go, yeah, this is wrong. I've got a blind spot here. And then they doubled down and they doubled down. And suddenly that's what takes you down these conspiracy theories of like, oh, well, the EHRC is now investigating. They're obviously in thrall to Israel. And then, and it's like, then Jews really do control the world because then look at what happened to Corbyn, rather than, and anyway, the point was that because I got sucked down like that and kind of, it sort of nullified me a little bit to then take a stand earlier, maybe on different things, because it wasn't like, I'd almost been evicted from the community of the good anyway, daring to take a stand on this. So actually I thought, well, I could see that this was, to my mind, morally wrong, what was happening, the abuse, and people say, it's a one-sided, people say, oh, it's a debate, and you've got people, all I ever saw, and again, this could be echo chambers, but all I've seen is rape and death threats and pylons onto people saying like sex is binary, or let's talk about what J.K. Rowling, let's have a talk about where the rights are conflicting and maybe we can work our way through, and being very reasonable, and the abuse that they got. And it was like, okay, I'm gonna take a stand also for this because I'm burnt anyway, so what's the difference? Right. That was that, that's why
maybe we all need to get burnt so we can stand up for
when we see that.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that perhaps, like as you said about your joke, you said, oh, it was an old joke, I was a bit embarrassed about it, blah, 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 but I've changed, I write differently. But surely there is room for us to develop as people as well. If you're kind of constantly being told, oh, well, you made that one tweet or you made that one comment, and then you have to stand by those. My opinions change, my viewpoint changed, the more information I have. But if we don't have discussions, if you're not allowed to ask the questions that we're, at the moment, I think certain topics, obviously gender is one of the things, you're not allowed to ask them, because immediately why don't you know these things? Well, I am ignorant to a lot of things. I want to know. If you don't allow that space, then we're in danger of creating the very thing that this like, oh, we're marginalized, we're being attacked, and you're not being attacked. It's just that we didn't understand, and now we're feeling resentful because we don't feel, that we do understand what the scenario is. If that makes sense, what I just said.
Yeah. But
I'm tired now. Sorry.
I think that there's a very deep urge for fairness in society, and I think that people realise that offence archaeology is instinctively unfair, going back to people's tweets from 10, 12 years ago, and then I think people. I think there'll be a kickback against that because they know it's unfair. My kids are coming through now. They're in their early 20s. And they've been brought up, as internet kids, and they see it as unfair. It's unfair. I think we know. I think we know it's a bit hysterical, and I honestly feel it's going to get better quite quickly.
Yeah. Do we have something really cheery?
I was say, that's quite a hopeful note to leave it on.
Hope.
Yes.
All right. Well, look. Let's leave it with an image of Bunuel. Although I take it that we've exhausted ourselves not to talk about Tesco's and vaccines, or
I found that quite comic actually. The way that they
that was hilarious.
This Tesco's advert, which is actually quite a this might not be the best tweet about it actually, but I've shopped in Tesco alongside other brands my whole life. Regrettably, due to their current social engineering propaganda masquerading as an advert, I will take the moral stance of spending my money elsewhere. I don't know if you've seen the Tesco Christmas adverts. It's quite a defiant advert actually. It's an advert of like they're not going to stop us this Christmas. There's no stopping us now. We're going to have a great Christmas. We're going to do whatever we can to have a great Christmas as a reaction to last Christmas. And in it, there's a scene where Santa's obviously setting off to go around the world to give everyone his presents, and he shows his COVID pass to get into a different country. To me, that's just a funny little moment about the realities of modern life at the moment, and symbolic of our defiance. Santa's so determined, he's willing to show his pass and we're away. to other people, it just shows that Santa's a part of the globalist tyranny that wants to enslave us all to passports. It shows the humorlessness that these thought patterns can get you to. Do you know what I mean? It shows the sort of, I don't know. It just struck me as comic, because you watch the advert. The advert couldn't be more. No matter what they do to us this year, we're going to have a great Christmas. And I feel that when I'm out and about doing gigs, I feel that people will not be denied Christmas this year. I think it would be political suicide almost for the Tories to do anything to Christmas this year. Totally. I just think it's gone beyond that. And but there's people out there just they just see Santa as some kind of crazed vaxxer. You know, and that's where some people are at, isn't it?
Well, I mean, he's got big sacks, so maybe this is the this is what's its cousin? I've forgotten her name now. You know, Anaconda. But are you sort of, because you're quite strident on opening up the economy and stuff like that, though, aren't you, Paul? So because I wasn't sure where you were coming from on this one, whether you were.
I just think. I'm quite into. I think lockdowns will be. I think historically we'll be ashamed about lockdowns. I think it was an understandable reaction to being very scared about a new thing. I think they did, of course, incredible damage to all people in every respect. But I understand why they happen. I don't think they'll ever happen again. And I'm into opening up. It's not even about me being into opening up. It's like you look around and people are opening up. It's just like it's happening. It's happening now. I don't think another lockdown could happen. People are out shopping. People are out in the comedy clubs in very COVID-friendly environments. I mean, comedy clubs are like a petri dish for infection, aren't they? It's sort of
at the best of times, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not into.
Yeah, all right, when you're on the bill.
Yeah, I'm not into judging. What with all that laughter, I'm not into judging. I'm not into judging. I'm not into judging people. If people want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't. This division, this constant division throughout has been a bit. I feel unnecessary to me, and it's happening now with the vaccine. People, I'm essentially pro-vaccine, but if you don't want to take one, I think enough people who are vulnerable take the vaccines to have the desired effect anyway. I'm just not into this division thing. But this is an example of an argument from the other side.
You weren't going into this with the like this guy is obviously or man, woman.
No. It's just the humorlessness of it. I mean, it's just like, who takes where you do your shopping that seriously anyway? I mean, I go to the cheap. It's like you're in the cheese aisle worried about vaccine passports. It's just like, I'm just worried about where can I get some nice cheese and let's get home quickly. Do you know what I'm saying?
I just want them to put more people on the till on Sundays, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. It's more a comment on humorlessness, really. And when you see the advert, you realise, well, here it is. Here it's nothing stopping us. It's quite a sort of.
Need a little help?
It's just quite an.
Oh, don't you worry, my love. This year, nothing's stopping me.
Like half as big as they're making it, but it's been trending today. Like ban Tesco's or whatever. Don't go into Tesco's.
Yeah.
It's just
ridiculous. I've read some of the tweets. Oh my God, they really are. They're quite comedic in themselves. I'm disgusted. I shall never go there. I'm going to Morrison's instead.
Yeah,
it's over an advert. Are you kidding me? This is an advert.
But it's the judginess of the last 2 years that's the saddest thing of all. Of just and that first lockdown. We live in a flat. I've got 5 kids, no garden. Wow. And, this whole going out for an hour a day. And it was really hot that first lockdown as well. Mm. Yeah. And we're going out and I'd see tweets and Facebook posts like, I went to the park for my hour exercise and someone was sitting on a bench, or I saw, I saw 3 people together. I'm like thinking, you've got a massive garden, you asshole. I know. What is your problem? I remember one time I went out to the park with the kids and and the police moved us on because we'd been there 45 minutes. We got a 2-year-old at the time who can't exercise. It was so mental.
It was crazy. It was
horrible. It was so horrible.
A lot of judgment. Yeah.
And no, I was just laughing at Martin's Santa's
That's very funny, Martin.
Very good.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So let's finish on Paul's Bunuel. I need, because I wanted this explained to me anyway. I mean, I know Bunuel, but I just.
To be fair, you'll probably know Bunuel better than me. I mean, I studied drama at university.
Yeah, I didn't get this. What is this? Diana?
This is a new film called Spencer about Diana, and it concerns Christmas. I think it was Christmas 1992 when the affair between Charles and Camilla had just become public knowledge, and she was starting to unravel. It's a film in like sort of the style of like Madness of King George type thing, but it is a bit more sort of mainstreamy than that. But basically, really, it's just I just wanted to say it's a decent film.
Did you watch? You've seen? Is it out? Is it?
Yeah, I saw it last week, and I just really enjoyed it. I mean, I'm interested in the royal family anyway. It's a little bit pertinent with stuff that's coming through about Meghan, etc., who models herself a little bit on Di, but it's a sort of a character study of Lady Di as she's unravelling and failing to relate to the royal family. It's got quite surrealistic, sort of expressionistic moments, and it's quite a sort of, for a mainstream film, it is quite daring in terms of its form. And I just really enjoyed it. It's basically it's very.
Is she good? Is it? Because she looks.
She's brilliant. She's fantastic.
Yeah. Who is it as Di?
Really? Okay.
Pardon?
Who is it playing Di?
Kirsten Stewart.
Oh, right. Okay. She looks like she's washed up from HMS Pinafore on that photo.
She's amazing, and a lot of it's about her relationship with the kids as well. And it just feels quite topical with everything that's happening now.
A good Christmas movie.
Maybe. I mean, I think it's a good pre-Christmas movie. It's not like Holiday. It's not like Cameron Diaz.
Holiday. It can't be like Holiday.
No, Holiday's amazing. Don't get me on Holiday. But
oh my God,
but it's all I'm saying. It's a great film that people aren't necessarily talking about. That's all.
Oh, that's cool. All right, I'm going to check.
That's why Twitter's good, isn't it? Just gives you a little.
Absolutely. You know, I've got so many good book recommendations, films, TV shows.
Yeah.
You know, all coming from Twitter. There are absolutely positives.
Yeah. Everything good and everything bad's in there. You've just got to sift through it. Yeah. So.
I think that's a nice way to. Like, there's so many positive things we've got from Twitter. It's probably a nice way to end.
Yeah, it's just not this.
Your recommendations, guys, out there.
But for me, it wasn't this week, unfortunately. I was like, I need to put in a positive tweet. Like, I was just going through. I was like, has nothing good happened this week that I've seen? Unfortunately, not. But there are weeks where I will write a joke.
Yeah.
Oh, well. You can come back on when you do that. So what are you up to, guys? Where can people see you next and what you're doing? Josh, let's start with you. Well, people can see you on Hapless.
Please go on Netflix and watch Hapless, and if you enjoy it, please give it nice stars and all that stuff. I'm back gigging, which is lovely, and doing bits of acting, and it's great. It's so nice being out again, and like I wasn't sure during the lockdown and during everything, and I was like, am I interested in comedy as much, you know, and just being out there, and I've writing new jokes, and I'm loving it again. It's so nice to be out there and be with people. And that's maybe what was missing from my stand up before lockdown. I wasn't that bothered about people. I'd always say like, if you just pay me, I'm just happy to do, you know, whatever. And now it's like, I'm so happy to see people and be around people and this communal thing. It's just so, it's like, God, it is magical. I'm loving it.
It's great. The thing about stand-up is if you don't do it for a while, it doesn't make any sense. Just the idea that you've ever done it before just seems completely absurd. But then the more you do it, the more it makes sense and the better it gets. And so I'm right with you. I'm doing loads of gigs. The gig's absolutely fantastic. My book's out, 26.2 Miles to Happiness. And I'm writing a new one, but you can't have that yet. But yeah, just go. Live comedy it's amazing, and the thirst and the bounce back is massive. It just feels huge, and we're at a nice window now where people are so pleased to be back experiencing normal things. The crowds are great as well. They haven't descended into like cynicism and rage yet, which can happen.
They can say that to Twitter, can't they?
Yeah. Of course, they're still into that initial. Very pleased to be together and experiencing it. So it's golden days at the moment for stand-up comedy. It really is.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Got to get back out there. Yeah.
Good. Absolutely. Yes.
Guys, you've been an absolute joy. Really great discussions. I hope you come back.
I normally don't. I normally on a Sunday I start drinking about 4 or 5, so I couldn't. So I didn't. But I managed to about halfway. I managed to about halfway through the show before the wine came out. Really bad timing for me, the 8 till 9 record, but I enjoyed it and I've started.
Well, I'm very grateful to get out of bedtime. My wife just walked into the kitchen. She's just putting her finger up at me, and she is not happy.
Well, wish you all the best of luck with Hapless. I'm going to start catching that up now because it's obviously got time to watch it, and good luck with the book sales. I'm going to leave it to Julian to wrap up, but thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really been lovely, really, even if it's only through Zoom, it's been really nice connecting with you.
You've got a great backdrop.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. It's not real, by the way. This isn't my microwave. This is a fake microwave.
Yeah, well, I live in a flat as well, so I like to go have a garden. That's my garden.
Yeah.
See, I seem to be, I think my camera is sort of like, it's gone soft focus somehow, so I think it's like I'm being heckled by my own camera. So guys, thank you so much. It was like totally full to brim. It goes to prove that when we're back to 2x2, it's really hard to keep it to an hour because there was obviously so much to tackle. I mean, we haven't tackled a lot of those subjects before on this show, so inevitably, it was all bets were off there. So listen, guys, stay back in the green room momentarily so we can have a proper non-streaming goodbye. Meanwhile, I will say goodbye to the people that have watched us on the streams. Thank you so much for doing that. Please, as I say, do follow us at LKT Zoom. Watch out for next week's show, which is the 21st of November, and that's with Alice Frick and another guest that we haven't yet announced.
We
should get Fern Brady and Joe Caulfield.
Yes, absolutely. I think they'll be dying to get on the list now. So we'll confirm another guest for that show, but that will definitely be happening next week, same time, same place. Please do check us out on buymeacoffee.com, where you can donate to the show as well, which would be fantastic. And obviously go to YouTube, where you can see all previous shows, including the stream of this show and the various clips as well. So just a rousing good night from us all remains to be done. Good night.
Good night.
Night.